This is day one. Day one of a brand new organized movement, bringing voices to the street, desire to our homes, action to our hands. Yelling intent from the rooftops and coffee shops and poetry stage and internet page, telling the world that yesterday may have felt okay, but tomorrow's going to be better. Yesterday may have felt okay, but tomorrow's going to be better, sparking a revolution not of boots on the ground and automated drones, not of fists in the air grasping sticks and or stones. It's a revolution with one motto, one desire, asking one question. How did I make the world a better place today? It's a simple thought, though frustratingly vague. Do I mean to stand against war, poverty, racial profiling, violence against women, nuclear stockpiling? Am I trying to save the environment, question the government, cry to the firmament until there's a permanent red mark where forehead strikes wall? Nothing to do but stand tall and ask, how did I make the world a better place today? All of these together, because with so many avenues for change, it's easy to find a way to make the world better, each and every day. 3 steps past the garbage to the recycling bin, remembering that in war only non-players win. Throwing stones does not require you to be without sin, as this is a revolution of the voice, starting with, if you see something, say something. Skin color is not a warning label. Gay is not a morality fable. Women are not playthings or punching bags. And every time a comment, joke, or poem implies otherwise, a little piece of our potentially better world dies. So stand up and call them out. Public hatred deserves a public challenge. And maybe we can find a way so he, she, or they has a slightly better day. And this is the perfect example of my quest for a better tomorrow. Using the correct pronoun costs me nothing, yet might make someone's life a little bit easier. Me crossing that dark street might make that wary woman release a little bit of her fear. Calling out the N-bomb dropper, queer joke spitter, or woman-hating batterer might make someone realize they're not alone. And hate is not okay. This is day one of a brand new organized movement. It's day one every day. A fresh start to stop and say, yesterday may have felt okay, but tomorrow's going to be better. It's a revolution of one, but there's always room for you to start your own and find your own way to denounce the status quo and insist on a brighter day. Just shrug off the dark. Stand proud and say, this is day one. And how did I make the world a better place today?
I won't keep yelling at you from the front, but you know. Yeah, first, thank you so much for inviting me. This is really cool. I mean, the invitation was actually last year. It's kind of funny because in the spoken word community, the turnover is a lot faster. So when I got the invitation last year, I actually thought Margaret had made a mistake on the date, you know. But I thought, does she mean August? No, it's April. It's next year. So that was exciting, you know, to plan this far in advance and be all ready for it. And of course, as it turned out, a lot of things happened in the intervening time. Who was at? Anyway, I know somebody was because we talked about it, but. Was anyone at the tree before VerseFest? Do you know what I'm talking about? When Jeff Blackman came up and did a poem? Yeah. Well, I'm gonna do. He's not here, unfortunately. Where is he? No, I don't know. So I'm gonna do. I'll just say 5 times instead of 20 or whatever he did. That's thank you, Jeff Blackman. 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 All right. I was incredibly moved when I heard that happen. I heard it at VerseFest, and because we've been having our problems. I can't talk about it too much, you know, but you know, it's I talked about it in that poem. You know, when you stand up and when you see something you don't agree with and you want to stand up and say so, there's repercussions to that, as we have found out and we'll be finding out for the next few years in court. So, yes. All right, so that was called Day One. Obviously, it's the title piece in my book. This is Day One, which I have copies of here. I have another book called Rusty Priske Trapeze Artist, which I don't have copies of here, but that's okay. Well, I have one. It's mine. See, I'm going to do a poem out of there. Yeah, actually, I get all these side tangents. Last year, I was invited to speak at a class at Carleton, a Canadian feminism class, which, of course, blew my mind. Like, she sent me this message and said, I would like you to come and talk at this class. And my answer was, you mean me? Are you sure? Why me? But what she wanted to talk about was that poetry can be activism, right? Everything can be activism. If you're willing to talk about something and say something, it can be activism. And that I did a poem there that is nothing to do with activism, which is the whole point, right? Which I'm going to do now. It's called Angst, and there's a framing sequence, and it's all a true story. This friend of mine came in, said some things, which I'll tell you about. It's all a true story, but it is my kind of reminder as to why I do what I do, because I do a lot of depressing poetry, to be honest. It's not all I do, but I do a lot of it. So, yeah, it's called Angst. I told a friend that I perform poetry. He said that all poets just spew angst, overgrown emo kids ranting about all the perceived failings in their lives. I told him he was right, and that we have banded together to form a new superhero team, the Unhappy Angst Men. We fight crime, but we don't feel good about it. No angst for me, I said. I write poems about art and music and books and love and suicide and child abuse, because sometimes writing happy is a lie. Sometimes putting on a brave face with your mouth pulled up in a rictus grin only serves to deepen the pits, as shovelfuls of dirt are dumped on your face as you close your eyes and wait for it to be over. Is that angst? Maybe. But is the world better served by a Tom Sawyer whitewash over the screaming news headline graffiti that reminds us that just because she was smiling doesn't mean June Cleaver was happy? As the world tightens a rubber tube tourniquet around its forearm, we remember that there's no difference between track marks and highways when the end of the line doesn't hold salvation. Lumping the kid with the hollow realization of mediocrity in with those who see rebellion as a fashion statement and think that a $40 haircut can make them seem more street. Putting rips in a new pair of jeans in order to fit in with those who would trade any amount of street for a new pair of jeans or a bite to eat. Not that they would admit it, because neediness equals weakness, vulnerability equals weakness, depression is some sort of personality fault. But try telling that to the kid who wonders how many pills it would take, or the woman who sees the center line as the perfect opportunity to turn the wheel and face the headlights of that oncoming truck. If it's wrong to let the darkness out, to stop it from gnawing at your insides until you're as hollow as you feel, then how do you fight the despair? Because sometimes the world just fucking sucks. And the opposite of depression isn't joy, it's indifference. Because caring cuts both ways. So give the emo kids their stupid haircuts and whiny music if that's what gets them through the day. And if you're having trouble holding on, tell me. I'll listen. Because detachment doesn't make you cool. Stoicism doesn't equal strength, and suffering and solitude is never nobler than healing together. And to my friend who said that all poets spew angst, I'll wear that mantle with pride. Because what you call angst, I call giving a shit. And I'll defend that until the day I die. Yeah, the little framing thing there is true. When I first started doing poetry, I had a friend, and of course he was like, "That's lame," and then he said, "It's all just angst stuff." And my immediate reaction then, like this is the first couple years I was doing poetry, was, "Oh, I don't do that." And I remembered it. I went to write a poem that ended up kind of being this, but it wasn't quite this. And I started writing a poem and I went, oh man, that's exactly what I said to my friend Jill that I don't write. And so that kind of came around to, you got to write what you feel, it doesn't, sometimes you got to write about shitty stuff, and that's life. I said there is a true story in there. I used to say, "Oh, this poem's true, and this poem's, you know." And after a while, I realized that every poem's autobiographical, right? Even if it never happened, it doesn't have to happen. It's still true. And so I told you I often write depressing poems, which is funny because in slam, I don't perform depressing poems. I perform big poems, big poems. Well, I do. So I'm going to do one of these poems that I wouldn't have written before I came to that realization that you've got to write the truth. You got to write what's really for you, instead of just what's going to get you the big score at a slam. Who's been to a slam before? A couple of people, yeah. Did you get what a slam is? Yeah. It's just a competition. Right? There's no such thing as slam poetry, right? This is one of the big myths. There's no such thing as slam poetry. I'm a spoken word poet, but I do spoken word at slams, and there's scores. It means nothing. It really doesn't. And I'm the slam master, so I know. It's just that just means I run the competition. That's, yeah. All right, so this yeah, I'm not going to shy away from this. I sometimes suffer from depression. It's a thing. Not debilitating, thankfully, but bad enough. And sometimes I get out of it by writing, and sometimes that makes the poem sound way worse than it actually was, because you kind of feel all the bad stuff and let it come out, So this is called Insomnia. The silence of a house full of little sounds, each one a mystery of unnamed threats. The bed is cold and barren, her place not abandoned, just not occupied, as opportunity keeps us separate. The hour approaches 3, and sleep seems a memory from another lifetime. A lifeline tethered loosely, attaching me to a drifting cloud covered in sheep, steeplechasing in the dark. I start placing bets, but I lose interest as my mind won't leave me alone. My collateral's no good. It's all damaged goods from brainstem to stern, and I get that sinking feeling. Everything is heavier in the dark. I try writing poetry in my head, but it's all so morose, and the pages too porous as they soak up my tears. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but a broken heart really hurts as I fabricate reasons why she isn't coming home. Minutes pass, and the illogic of it stings like a rubber band to the neck, but the weight sits like a brick, never to be thrown, as I can't find a good enough reason to be angry. The curse of the self-aware is that all your paranoia is laid bare, and you can't even revel in irrationality. No weekend benders that let you forget, since there's nothing worth remembering. There's a difference between sadness and depression, as one has no easily identifiable reason to prop up on a painter's easel to wallow and overcome. Without reason, it's so much worse. Just like those who listen to the blues and smile. You're doing it wrong. There's nothing worse than trying to fix something unbroken, but you feel broken. Hairline cracks across your skin, behind your eyes, and through your heart as you hold it together with habit and hope, watching out for that one sharp smack that'll shatter illusions of wholeness. If confidence was something you could see, mine would still be invisible, or pushed aside by the specter of failure, mostly imagined. But things are larger in the dark. I can hear them talking behind my back, the voices coming through the walls and settling over me like a Halifax fog, full of sound and fury, signifying whatever my animal brain insists upon. Don't ask me. I just work here. It's the fear that's still in charge. It lets me out during the day sometimes. But now it's approaching 4, and the day is far away. I just wait and try to forget and try to remember what it feels like to be loved. All right. Yeah, I don't do that one very much because I do slams, and it's not really the slam type poem, but it's real, it's true. It's good poetry, I guess. All right, I'm going to do a poem now that I was talking about. Those who saw me posting on Facebook. Debut. No one has ever heard this poem. Well, it's not true. My wife is the only one who's ever heard this poem. And when I read it for her, I was like, I just wrote this. And I go and basically yell at her, so I don't even know if she remembers any of it. It's called Bear. It actually came from a prompt. I don't usually do those. I think they're cool, but I usually just don't do them. But I have a book, spoken word workbook by Sherry D. Wilson, who's an amazing poet out of, she was at Verse Fest, yeah. And she had this workbook, and in there was a prompt about writing about your spirit animal. And I don't, have one or whatever. But I ended up writing this. It's called Bear. Can you guess what my animal is? In some communities, a big old galoot like me with a swath of festering face fuzz is called a bear. But I'm not that hairy. My chest has no rainforest overgrowth. It is grassland at best. So for a bear, I'm awfully bare. And this bear can barely bear to think of bounding through the forest with a booming baritone bounty of bare necessities, bringing a bounty of buoyancy to every Billy Bob and Bobby Sue, even though I really love that song. Because not every trouble can be packed away in an old kit bag, and smile, smile, smile ranks somewhere on the scale of helpful advice between keep your chin up and always look on the bright side of casual crucifixion. But I can't bear it, with or without grinning. It would take a boatload of Bayer aspirin to step or sop the stress soup while watching this bear. Because it isn't easy. The world, that is, or society, humanity, dog diggity, planetary plenary, it's all a beach ball of stress strain, so let's stop pretending that it's somehow abnormal to freak the fuck out when ripping shit up would make so much sense. See? So say some seams are strained. So? Say some cracks crisscross and spider spin webs of waste and want. Whatever. No matter what we do, the world grinds away, waging war after war, not all declared. Hobnail boots breaking bones under the yoke of capitalist oppression, emotional repression and system-wide depression, treated with trickle-down pharmaceuticals and televised bread and circuses, leaving us with a choice. We can either speak up, shout out, tear down, tore up from the floor up, and burn this mother down. Or head to the forest and look for the bare necessities, the simple bare necessities. Forget about your worries and your strife. But this is one bear that believes that all is not lost. And if we bear down, we can bear the load together until the bare necessities of life will come to you. And that I can bear. Something happened a couple years ago. And it's in there. And I started singing in a bunch of poems, which is just ridiculous because I'm like, I can't sing at all. But it's fun. It's fun. How am I doing? I talk too much between poems. I know. All right, I'm going to do a poem now that it's actually originally it's a few years old. It started as a story that I used to tell people from when I lived in Calgary, like all true, not just autobiographical, but actually happened, biographical. But last year, we turned it into a team piece with me and Avonlea Fotheringham back there. Unfortunately, I don't have the team version. Otherwise, I'd get her to do it with me. But I'll do the original version. It's called The Stranger. And without meaning to, it became one of my most controversial poems that I ever, people constantly, I want to talk about that. And, yeah, I don't think of it that way, but other people do. Yeah, as I say, true story, called The Stranger. Okay. Sneakered feet fall heavy on wet sidewalk, kicking aside fallen leaves from their autumnal suicide ritual. I step under a streetlight. Shadows scurry for cover until I move past. The young woman walking ahead turns her head, furtively, like an amateur spy dropped into Cold War East Berlin. She looks again, then hastens her pace. The gap stays steady as I top her by a full foot, so her quickened walk only matches my casual one. That's when I realize she's afraid of me. Of me. How could anyone be afraid of me? I am willfully gentle. I'm more a threat to an unattended buffet than I am to a fellow pedestrian, despite the late-night gloom and chill of seminal horror movies. Or worse, city crime pages. Then I remember the night I was mugged. 2 assailants and a wrench to the back of the head. They wanted my bank deposit and a parting kick to the temple. It was over so fast, I was numb, in shock when I called the police. The fear came on the next night. Walking home from work at 1 a.m., my heart jackhammering so loud it drowned out the approach of my attacker that I knew was coming. I jerked and shuddered at every sound or movement. I felt the blow from the swung wrench a full day after impact. But nothing happened. Nor the next night. The fear abated. But I am me, and my non-consensual walking companion is half my size. I learned that people weren't walking around carrying back pocket mechanics tools in order to stage random assaults, but what if they were? To that young woman, every man might as well be packing a dirty, hairy peacemaker with the intent to use it, and being mentally prepared against every innocent is better than being unprepared against the one who isn't. She looks again at her potential assailant, the one who would show up as an artist's sketch if she was able to muster any description. Now, no one wants to be accused of a crime or threat of a crime just for existing, to be judged based on your chromosomes with no possibility of retort, but this is a small loss compared to going through life as a walking target, as the world tries to thrust the label of victim upon you. By force, if necessary. I look again at the young woman who just wants to get home safe. And I do the only thing I can do. I cross the street. Because no one should have to live their life in fear. Yeah, that obviously I wrote that one before I wrote the day one, because day one actually refers to that poem. I did them in the wrong. I should have done the other. No, but yeah. So that's one that's kind of important to me. I like doing it. Yeah, so I'm gonna wrap up. I think I'm about there. But before I do, I want to thank Margaret and Colin and everyone with Tree for having me. Like, it's really great. As I said at Capital Slam last weekend, I was like, it's not that often that the page world and the spoken word world come together. A verse fest and very little else. Not nothing, but very little else. And so I told them, you all need to support this and come to the show. They didn't come. But yeah, it's actually, in the time I've been involved in spoken word, it used to be that there'd be like one show a month and everybody would come. Now that there's probably 4 shows a week. I mean, without exaggerating, they're on constantly, which makes it hard to get them to come up. But some people came. So I'm going to finish with one of my favorite poems, which I hardly ever get to do. Because, well, quite frankly, the audience at my shows doesn't understand everything that I say in this poem. Because I'm older than them by decades. And once again, I sing in it. This is called 1968. It's the year I was born. As Colin mentioned, I've got copies of the book if anyone's interested. Those are $15. The old one actually is still available, but only on the internet, like, 'cause I have to print at blurb.com. But yeah. This is where in our shows people are like, I'm a touring poet and I need blah, but I'm not. So I have a government job. All right. Yeah, it's called 1968. I was born during the Tet Offensive, as the mighty Americanos learned what Sun Tzu knew about playing in another team's backyard. A year before Neil Armstrong proved there was nowhere mankind couldn't despoil, leaving a trail of trash in its wake. We watched both on a little box in glorious Technicolor, bringing the future kicking and screaming into the present, past a collective wide-eyed awe, fast becoming jaded as horror and wonder both became entertainment. Happy myths such as lunar green cheese and a just war joined bobby socks and rumble seats in a naive world. Writers could spin, but pictures couldn't lie. Right? We saw what we were shown and believed it all. It was a dark time when you can't believe your eyes when your eyes see lies. Well, I believe in beetles. Or maybe scarabs, as our view of Arabs switch from happy Indiana Jonesian Egyptians to high-flying skywriters in the blink of an eye. Or snap of a shutter. As this latest fear-mongering is brought to you by Slippy Peanut Butter, the choice of a new generation. Or germination, as the seeds of mistrust are planted just below the surface. I was conceived during the summer of love and sprang forth fully armored into a new year of war. As summer always gives way to fall, and love to pride as the flowers fall from our hair and the girl from the North Country Fair sports a page boy and looks at me like she can guess my name. Well, if it's all the same, I want a do-over. Red Rover, I call a sense of optimism over. Or freedom, or maybe just sunshine on a cloudy day. Because sometimes, every day is cloudy. When the desire to stand and be counted means being like Tommy Smith and John Carlos, put up your fist if all you want is. I was born during a 5-day sit-in at Howard University, 1 week after the My Lai massacre. I was born 2 weeks before Martin Luther King Jr. paid the ultimate price for daring to ask for a little justice. I dream a little dream of peace. Of pieces of a broken world built on a crumbling foundation, as all pretense is lost and we no longer have fights for rights. Instead, we have squabbles over payouts. I was born during a time of war. I was born during a time of potential. I was born during a time of death and birth and principles and desire and a movement and revolution and evolution in collusion. I was born by a river in a little tent, just like that river I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know change is gonna come. Oh, yes it is. I was born just in time, because the change is gonna come. And this is day one. Thank you so much.